Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our webinar today. I'm Bo Pinnell. I'm the CEO of Tekkie Help. Tekkie Help is an IT company that was set up to provide support to people at home and businesses. Over the last decade, we've gained a great deal of experience and knowledge of the problems people are facing in their homes, and today we're going to share some of that experience with you to hopefully help with your home setup. So today what we're going to be talking about is the fundamentals of iCloud. We're not going to cover iCloud in depth. There's a whole raft of different parts of it. But today, just its basic operation to give you some understanding of how that works. We are going to take it into family sharing, why you would use it, what it's useful for, and we're going to show you how to configure that, how to set it up at home, and finally some key points to it. To consider. We will be taking questions at the end of the presentation. So if you have any of those, please type them in as we go, and we'll pick those up, and I'll do my best to answer those when we finish. So, straight into the deep end. This is a diagram showing you how the iCloud synchronizes. You will see that we've got a phone connected here to the iCloud. Your phone will sync to the iCloud if it has your Apple ID on it and you've ticked a couple of boxes to enable photos to synchronize and iCloud documents. So there are, if you like, two parts to the iCloud. There's iCloud Photos and there's iCloud Documents and Desktop, which is known as iCloud Drive. So you can actually choose to connect one or both of those and synchronize your phone to the iCloud. Now, the main thing to remember with iCloud is it is a fully synchronizing piece of software. In other words, everything that you, say for example, you synchronize your photos, every photo that you put on your phone synchronizes to the cloud. And every photo that's in the cloud already will synchronize back onto your phone. This is a really key point because in our experience, where customers have a real big problem is that they believe it's a one-way system. So they take a picture on their phone like this, a nice big full-size picture. It synchronizes up into iCloud. And once it's there, they think, okay, well, I don't need that picture anymore because it's now safely in the cloud and I'll delete it off my phone. If you delete it off the phone, it'll then delete off the iCloud. It is a two-way synchronizing process. You can't choose what you sync. You either sync everything or you sync nothing at all. Can't, for example, sync the most recent pictures or just a particular album. The whole lot is syncing. And if you happen to have your laptop signed into the same Apple ID and you've got that picture you've taken on your phone, it will download onto your laptop. Again, if you delete it off your laptop, it will delete from the laptop, it will delete on the iCloud, and it will delete on your phone. So, one of the issues we see with customers is they're unclear how that synchronizing works. They will, for example, connect to the iCloud, watch all their pictures upload into the cloud and think, okay, they're all there, all nice and safe. So what I'm going to do now is save space on my phone and I'm going to delete the pictures. Deleting the pictures will delete them in the iCloud, will delete them off the laptop. 30 days later, when your bin clears, you've lost all your photos and they are not recoverable. So that's mistake number one. The other thing that we often see is that people will give their phones, their old iPhones, to their children. And quite often they will leave their Apple ID connected on the phone so that their children can actually download apps. The problem with having their Apple ID on this children's phone is the children have full control over their Apple ID. Now that does mean that the children can delete the photos that they don't want or that are taking up more space on their phone than they wish because they want to put more games on their phone. They will delete those photos, they'll delete it in the iCloud, they'll delete on the computer, and of course they'll delete on any other phones connected to the account. So in that way, the data could be lost. If it's lost in one big go, maybe you notice and you can pull the photos out of the trash. What we do see fairly frequently is that the children will delete some of the photos, maybe the first 2 or 3 years to make a bit of space, and then that may not be so obvious. You may not notice that deletion for a little while, after which the bin may have already cleared, it'll be too late. And it's the same with documents. Of course, the other problem is that if you've got phones all connected on the same Apple ID, let's say you put these two phones here on the same Apple ID, then any text on this phone here will appear on this phone here, and it will share calendars, it will share contacts, and again, you are then at risk of that content being deleted by your children. So to get over this problem, what Apple have done is they've created something called Family Share, where you can actually put your phone and your partner's phone and your children's phones in one group. So let's just talk a bit about how that might work. This group, of course, is designed to overcome some of the problems that I've just talked about. Apple designed the Apple ID to be used by one person only. You might use it on your two devices, your iPad and your phone, or even on your computer as well, but only for one person. Family sharing was set up by Apple to enable families to operate as a group. So you can have up to 6 family members within the group, and each family member has their own Apple ID. And there are lots of other features that Family Share can offer you. So let's just have a quick look at what those features are. So the advantages of family sharing are that you can keep your data separate. So for example, contacts on your phone are not viewed by other members of the group. Your pictures are not viewed by other members of the group. And you have some ability to control other members of the group. If you're the organizer, you can, for example, limit your children's activity on their devices. Now, one point down here, which is quite important, is that if your children are under the age of 16, they can't have an Apple ID in their own right. But with family sharing, you can do that. You can create an Apple ID for them, and providing that Apple ID stays in the family share under your control, the children are allowed to have their own separate Apple ID. So those children are controlled to some extent by you. You can actually control a number of things, which we'll come on to a bit later. Hence the reason why they're able to have their Apple ID even though they're not at 16. And family sharing can help reduce your costs. We'll talk a bit about how that works in a moment. But there are certain things that you can share that you don't have to buy twice, and that saves you money as well. So family sharing for a family with maybe a husband, wife, a few children, and maybe even parents in the group as well can work extremely well. So what are the features of family sharing? If you set up a family share group and you add, for example, your partner and your, let's say, 2 children, then you can share purchases. What that means is that if one of the family buys an app, spends money to buy it, the other members of the family can also download that app free of charge. You can share music subscriptions. So if, for example, you subscribe to Apple Music, then the rest of the family can also share your subscription. And in that way, you don't have to buy your separate subscriptions per member of the family. You can share the iCloud storage. So the organizer, the person who sets up the family share in the first place, they become the organizer, and they can share their iCloud allocation amongst the family. When you set up family sharing, it sets up a shared photos album, and everybody in the group can see that shared album. Now, an important point to make here is that you don't actually see each other's photo libraries. You just see the contents of the shared album, which obviously is empty when you start, and you add in pictures and everybody can see them in the family. In a similar sort of way, you are given a shared family calendar. So this is a place where you can put events that the family will all attend, holidays, important appointments, birthdays, and all of that sort of other family calendar information. With Family Share, you have the option to be able to locate other members of your family. Now, members of the family could choose to turn that function off if they don't want to be located, But in the case of your children, it's got a handy feature if you can see where their devices are at any one time. And it can actually help your family security knowing where they are. With this family sharing setup, you can control app downloads. So, for example, if your children want to download something from the App Store, you can decide whether you will let them or not. So there is some sort of management and control, and there's also a very limited form of parental control included. What that does, that allows you it enables you to say what your children can download, what they can watch. It enables you to set maximum time that they're allowed to be on the internet, and enable a downtime. So, for example, at night they can't use their devices. And also you can even control which people they can communicate with in terms of texts and calls. And in that way, just restrict their activity to what you think is reasonable. So let's look at how we set up family sharing. The easiest way to set it up, you can actually set it up from your iPad or your phone or your computer, but the easiest way to set it up, I think, is via the phone. And you simply go to your settings on the phone, you click on your account at the top here, and you will see an option just below that to set up family sharing down here. Now you can add into your family share group. Obviously, you're going to be the organizer because you're setting it up, but you can add into the family share group your partner if they have an existing Apple ID. You don't have to create a new one for them. You can add in their existing Apple ID. And if your children are old enough and they happen to have their own, you can add them in as well without problem. If your children don't have an Apple ID, you can create one for them here. So this is the way in which you can get an Apple ID for your children, even if they're under 16. So you can set up a new Apple ID, and it takes you through some very obvious steps that are easy to complete. And in that way, you end up with a family share group. Once you've got the family share group, you can actually see each member of the family. And I can just show you that. I can just switch you over. Just give me a moment. I'm going to switch you over to a phone I've got here set up to demonstrate this. There we go. Let's get that out of our way. Okay, so here's our demonstration phone. I would just simply go to my settings on the phone. I can then go to click on the top up here where it says Tekkie Help Parent. And you can see I've got a family share group set up down here. I can click on that, and here is my family group set up. You can see there are 3 members in my group. There's myself as a parent, the organizer, and 2 children, which we call John and Jane. And down below, you've got a series of options which you can set. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you configure family share in a few moments. But this is where you configure purchase sharing, the iCloud storage sharing, location, set up parental controls, share the Apple Music channels maybe, and TV channels and Apple Arcade. You can decide who gets what to look at. Okay, so let's flip back to our presentation here. So we've set up the family group, we've added in our children. Our next thing is to configure the family share to work the way we want it to work. Okay, so one of the options is to set up location sharing. You click on location sharing. So we go to that screen we were on just now. To get there, remember, you just simply go into the settings, click on your Apple ID, and you get to see the family share setup. And you go onto location settings, and you can click to enable that and activate it. Now, if you want to see where members of your family are, you have to go to the Find My Phone app. But because you've activated the service within the Family Share, you will now see your family members in the Find My Phone app. So that sets you up with location sharing. Let's just move on, make sure I've got the right one there. There we go. So let's move on to purchase sharing. So in a very similar way, you can allow purchases that you make to be shared with the family. Same process of going into the Family Share settings and activating that. You can, let's say, for example, share an app with a member of the family. The member of the family can download that app. If it's a paid-for app, they can download it free of charge. If the app has content, like say, for example, it's a financial services app, and you put in loads of information, when the other member of your family downloads the app, it won't have all of your personal information in it. It will just simply be the app that they're downloading as if any other customers downloaded it from the store. If you want to see purchases that other people in your family bought, you have to go to the App Store on your phone, and you click on your icon on the App Store, and you can then see an option called Purchased. Within that purchase list will be all the apps that you've purchased, but also the ones that other members of your family have purchased. And you can then choose to download those onto your phone. When you set up Family Share, one of your options is this Ask to Buy option. What that means is that your children must ask you before they can buy an app. So the process is that they will, on their phone, find an app in the App Store and click on it to download it. You will then get a message saying, John or Jane wants to download this app. Do you allow it? Do you agree it? And if you do, they can download it. If you don't, they can't. Now, if you've got a second adult in the group, you can designate them to be a parent, guardian, and they can also agree whether those requests can be fulfilled or not. In other words, yourself or your partner can agree whether a child can download an app or not. Let's just talk briefly about screen time. So screen time is the parental control app part of family sharing. So when you set up family sharing, you can configure screen time. It enables you to do some features. We're not going to cover it in great depth today. It's quite a big subject all on its own, but we're going to just give you a quick flavor of the sort of things you can do. So downtime, number one, shown on the slide in front of you. This sets when you can actually access the internet. So, for example, if you don't want your children to be accessed during after bedtime and before a certain time in the morning, you can set that downtime and the device is not accessible during that period. You can set app limits. Number two, app limits says what the type of apps that the children can use and for how long. So you can set that up. Then you can set communication limits, which is very useful because it enables you to control which people your children can contact either by text or call. And you can block that communication during the night, even if they're allowed to contact somebody. So you might, for example, create a contact list for them with a few critical people that they would call in an emergency and only give them access to that contact list. There's an always allowed option, which is to enable them to access apps at any time. They might be ones you consider useful for an emergency, or, for example, just simply the camera, which you might be happy for them to access anytime, even when you may not be happy for them to access games, for example. And there are some content and privacy restrictions, so you can stop them downloading and watching films which are above their age limit. And you can, for example, control the type of music that they're allowed to download and listen to. And it gives you a little bit more control over the content of what the children are watching. Now, I will make the point again that the screen time is not a comprehensive parental control package. It gives you some basic functionality. There are other apps that are the paid-for apps that give you quite good parental control, but by far the best way to control your children is, of course, be very aware of what they're looking at, what they're browsing, and where possible, educate them and limit them to try and protect them. So let's talk a little bit more about this iCloud storage sharing, which is one of the features of family sharing. So the organizer, the person who sets up the family share initially, normally mum or dad, they can actually share their allocation with the rest of the family. So for example, if the parent buys a 2 terabyte storage package, that's an awful lot. They might have to buy 2 terabyte because the next step down is 200 gigabytes, 200 gigabytes, yeah, 0.2 of a terabyte. So if they bought that package and they're just a bit over, maybe they're 300 gigabytes, which we see a lot of at the moment, we find that the iCloud storage you require is directly proportionate to your age and how many children you have. The older you are, the more kids, the more storage you're going to need. But families we're seeing are typically around that sort of 200 to 400 gigabit plan. And so, of course, that pushes some of them into the 2 terabyte option if they bust the 200 gig. Once you're in 2 terabyte, you've got a lot of spare capacity. And so it's great that you can share that with your family. So you buy the 2 terabyte and everybody can use it. There is no allocation control. So if your children use more than they're supposed to use and take out all of your capacity, you have to go and rent it back from them. You also, point number 2 down here, you also have to have at least the 200 gigabyte package from Apple before you can share it. You can't share the 5 gigabit free package or the next step up, which is 20 gigabytes. Okay, so 3 main points. You can share your storage if you're the organizer. You have to be on the 200 gig or above plan, and you can't control who uses how much. You do, however, see in the family share settings, you do see who's using what amount. So you are able to see what people are using. The subscription sharing is what it says actually. Simply, you buy Apple Music or an Apple subscription like that, and you can share the content to the rest of the family. So again, this is a good way to save money, because in many families, all the family want access to music, and instead of buying a number of subscriptions, one for each of them, you can actually share just the one subscription. And that applies to the Apple TV content and any new Apple services that are brought on. Let's talk a bit about photos now. How do you share photos? Now, you will recall that I said at the beginning that you don't share your photo libraries. So everybody has their own photo library. Everybody with an Apple ID has their own photo library associated with that Apple ID. You don't share your photo library. So you do have access to a shared photo album that gets created for you by Apple. And if you log into your photos, if you look at your photos on your phone, you will see a new shared album appear when you set up your family share group called Shared Family. It's called Family. And into that album, you can drag photos that you want the rest of your family to see. And they can drag photos into the same album for you to see. So a few key points then. You get to see the shared album under the shared album part of your Photos app. On your computer, you'll see it in the Photos app, again under shared albums. On your computer, you do need to be connected with an Apple ID online to be able to see shared albums. Each family member can add photos and videos for everyone to see, a nice way for you to share photos with your children and vice versa. And family photos posted by other members to the family do not exist in your main photo library unless you import them. You can see them on your phone maybe. You can see them as a shared, in the shared family album, and because you're in the Photos app, you can be misled into believing they are part of your Photos app. They're in your personal collection, but they're not. So to see those photos in your personal collection and keep them, you need to import them. So click on the photo, choose the import function, bring that photo into your photo collection. And in terms of control, the organizer, Family Share, they can delete photos and videos from the shared album that anybody posts, and subscribers can only delete the ones that they post. Do bear in mind that once you post a picture to the shared album, any pictures deleted from the shared album, do not delete your originals. Once you post them to the shared album, it is a copy that's in the shared album, and anything that happens to that doesn't happen to your original, which is still in your photo library. Okay, so key points to note. With family sharing, you do not have a combined family photo library. If you want to explore the possibility of how you deal with that and how all members of the family can get to see the family photo collection, then do look up our photo organization and management courses. We do those very frequently, and there's a 3-hour course that talks you through how to manage the photos, how to deal with them, how to let people enjoy them, your children or your partner, and it tells you a bit about how to back them up as well, and make sure they're all safe. So we have dedicated workshops live if you want to attend the course, or you can do them online as well. In a similar way to shared photo albums, the family sharing setup also creates a shared calendar. So all the members of the family can see that calendar, and you can actually add important family events, as we mentioned earlier, into there for everybody to help coordinate within the family. Now, I want to cover off a few key points that have arisen during this presentation. So, the first one, and probably the most important, iCloud is a synchronizing software. Okay, so everything you do on your phone, if you're connected to the iCloud, it will sync to the iCloud. Everything you do in the iCloud syncs back onto your phone. It's not a proper backup, and I say it's not a proper backup because, of course, a backup is some store where you can go back and you can restore your data once you've lost it. But of course, with iCloud synchronizing, if you make a mistake and the mistake synchronizes into the iCloud, there is no backup. So as part of a backup plan, iCloud is very useful, but it's not a backup in itself. And we cover that also on our Photos course and on our Mac backup course, which is extremely useful if you've not got a backup and you feel you're very vulnerable. Do look at that course because that'll help you manage your backups. And of course, don't share your Apple ID with your children or your partner because they may delete stuff that they don't want, but you do want. Next point, children under the age of 16 cannot have their own Apple ID in Singapore. That age group does vary in different parts of the world, but 16 in Singapore. If your children are logged into your Apple ID on their devices, they have full control of your account. So not only do they see your texts or the iText that you send, they see your contacts if they wish, they can see your photos, and they can delete whatever they don't like. So that's a very dangerous situation. You should try to avoid that. Do bear in mind that when you log in on your device to the Apple iCloud, you have 2 separate logins. You have the login to your iCloud, which covers things like your photos store, where your contacts are synced, calendars, and you have login to the iTunes store, the Apple store, where you can buy apps. Now, normally, for most people, they are logged into both of those different things with the same Apple ID, which keeps everything nice and simple and very easy. But do check on your phone when you set up Apple sharing, because Apple Family Share, because you might find, for example, that your iCloud account on your child's phone is logged in with their new family sharing ID, but the store is logged in on your Apple ID. So do check. You can do that in settings can show you how to do that a little bit further on if somebody raises that as a question. Okay, so I spoke to Apple recently, and I asked them what was the biggest problem that that people called their call centers about with Family Share, and they gave me a quite surprising answer. It actually wasn't how Family Share works or any aspect of it. It was to do with how you get back accounts that have been lost. Apple's advice to all of us is that you need to ensure you have a recovery email and a recovery phone number associated with each of the accounts in the Family Share. Now, whether you have Family Share or you don't, you should always have a recovery phone number and email. What that is, for those of you who've not experienced that before, recovery email is an email that Apple can send you an email to say, okay, you've been locked out of your account, you can click on this link to get back in. A recovery phone number is a place where Apple can send a text to do exactly the same thing. So you will, for example, when you set up your Apple ID, you have an email address that's your login, and it's the one that's associated with your Apple ID, but they'll also ask you for a recovery email, which can be your partner's email, maybe a work email. You must be careful with work emails. If you change job and forget to change your recovery address, you can get locked out. But quite a lot of people have secondary emails. It might even be the email of your parents or something that you can get access to if you get locked out. In the case of your children's Apple ID, the recovery email and phone number are probably best to be yours. So if they get locked out, you can recover their accounts for them. Screen time has limited control. You can't, for example, see all the things that your children are browsing and all their activity online. It does give you some basic functionality, but bear in mind it is limited in certain ways. And the last point, photos libraries cannot be shared. If you want to do stuff where you can share your libraries and you can have other members of the family enjoying the photos, particularly your partner perhaps, then you need to have a different strategy. And again, that's the sort of thing we cover in our photo courses. Okay, I'm going to take any questions you might have now. Okay, I've got one question coming in here. Can you select just one family member to share your calendars and not your children? Yep, you can. In the settings, you can determine which people are allowed to share the calendar. Okay, I've got another question coming here. It says, I noticed that the apps I've purchased and downloaded on my phone also appear on my son's phones. One of those apps is a financial app that tracks my expenditure. Obviously, I don't want my son or others to see that information. If I delete the app from my son's phone, will that also delete it from my iPhone? So there's two questions here, really. First of all, the son appears to have a phone on an app on his phone that the wife has downloaded. And what should have happened is when the son asked to download that app, he would have been refused permission. So I would suspect in that situation that the wife has put her Apple ID into the store on her son's iPhone. In other words, the son's iPhone, you have his Apple ID associated with his main Apple account, but with the Apple Store, they've still got the parents' Apple ID in there. If both of the son's logins for the Apple Store and for his iCloud account were both set up to his, then when he asked for the app to be loaded, the wife would have had that request and could have refused it at that point. In any event, if the son does download the app from the store that the wife is using for her financial control, then the son will have a clean copy of it with none of the wife's data. So when you download the apps, you don't get all the information that your parents or your children have put into that app. You just get the app if you were just any other person buying it from the App Store. Another question, if my husband has his own iCloud account, which he doesn't at the moment, does this mean that he can't have free access to the iCloud photos? Is is it only the shared album that he has access to? It is only the shared album he has access to. Remember what we said at the beginning, if you have your Apple ID and your husband have a separate one, then your photos are in your Apple ID cloud and your husband's are in his Apple ID cloud. Now there are ways to give access to the husband and the wife to the same photo library. Again, that's something we cover on our course. There's a number of ways to set that up depending on what you're trying to achieve. We cover those on the course. Okay, for Find My iPhone, to work for the family, do we need to ensure it's switched on each family member's device? Yes, you do. So your children should have Find My Phone clicked on, and they have to consent to you seeing their device location. Now, members of the family can opt out of that. So say, for example, you have a husband and wife, both members of the family group, and the wife or the husband doesn't want their location to be tracked by the children or their partner, then that can be achieved by just turning off that function on the partner's phone. So it is an option, it's not something you can't turn off. This question says, I've got 80 gigabytes photos and I've just upgraded to the 2 terabyte cloud. What's the best way to clear my iPhone data seamlessly? So reading between the lines, it looks as if this particular person wants to make more space on their phone. Now, if that is the case, the best way is to disconnect your phone from the iCloud. You might load all the pictures you've got on it currently into the iCloud and then turn off the iCloud synchronizing function for photos. Now, if you turn it off, that means is that you no longer are connected to the cloud. Any photos you delete on the phone will not be deleted on the cloud. Do make sure you are disconnected. You would then, any new photos you have taken are not going into the cloud and are not therefore going to perhaps your main family library, if that happens to be the case. But you can get those in by plugging them into a computer, importing them into the photo library, which is on the computer, and they'll all upload into the cloud. So customer here says, thank you very much. This has been very interesting. So I think family sharing for us is perfect for most things, but the only thing that stops me is my husband currently enjoys looking at all the historical photos from time to time and sharing them randomly. Maybe random sharing. Maybe we should continue sharing my Apple ID with my husband and just create a separate one for the kids. If you continue sharing your Apple ID, sure enough, you do have one photo library for the two of you, but you have all those other issues. So my advice would be, don't share your Apple ID between two people. It causes all sorts of problems, like, for example, contact sharing and calendars. So you're unable to have your own contacts separated out. So there are other issues which we're not covering on this course caused by sharing an Apple ID. There are ways in which your husband could access the family library and curate the photos. We're not going to be able to cover all those options on this course today. It's a very short introduction. But again, if you wish to get into more depth on that and run through some of the solutions, I would strongly recommend our Manage and Organize Your Photos course. Last question here. The one thing I've always pondered, if you have a family account, is there a way to prevent that if one downloads an app, that downloads to all devices on the account? When enabled purchase sharing, I see options to auto-share purchases with a family. Presumably, if that is disabled, then my purchases are not shared with them, but they have the ability to still purchase via the account. Is that correct? So again, I think this falls into that category we spoke about before. The first question, if you download an app, can you prevent it from downloading to everybody? Yes, you can. You can, in the case of your children, So let me roll back a bit. If you download an app on your phone, the other people in the family share group don't automatically get that app. They only get that app if they request it to be downloaded. The advantage of family share is if that app was a paid-for app, they could download it free of charge because it's already been paid for by one member of the family. So if you download an app and you see that app appear on your children's devices, then I strongly suspect that their iTunes store, their Apple store, if you like, is still logged into your Apple ID instead of being logged into theirs. So do check that. The second point is that if you download an app and your children request that app to be downloaded, you should be getting requests to buy requests coming from the children. Even if the app is free, the same process still applies. Okay, so I think that covers off all of those points. I think that's all for today. Hopefully that's been helpful for you, but do not hesitate to contact us at Tekkie Help. We'll be pleased to help you with one-to-one sessions if you wish. And if you've got any complex situations and you want to help have us help you work through those, we're more than happy to meet up with you and sort it out for you. Sarah's contact details are shown in front of you. And I hope very much that you found today useful, and we look forward to working with you hopefully in the future. Thank you very much. Bye.